Greetings to you all. My name is Brenda Kandiero, and today I'm at Hillcrest Farm. I'm going to be talking to you about animal welfare, livestock animal welfare. This is a slightly different topics from the ones that we always bring to you, but I think this is also a very important topic so that we take good care of our animals. Remember that these animals are in our capable hands, and everything that we do must be able to make the animals happy so that they can also do the production that we are anticipating. So today I'm going to be talking to you about the 5 freedoms of animal welfare derived from the United Kingdom animal welfare. It is very important for all livestock farmers to take into consideration the wellness of their animals, as well as looking into whether the animals are happy or not, because we always believe that a happy animals will produce better than a stressed animals. So, as I have mentioned before, the first freedom is the freedom from hunger and the freedom from thirst. So it is very important that whether you're keeping cattle or you've got chickens or you've got pigs, you have to make sure that feed and water are available, not just available, but they're also available in the right quantities and the right quality. So the first thing that I'll talk about is water. And whenever we talk about water, we're talking about the water that is safe for your animals. So if you've got your chickens, it is always very important to make sure that the nipple lines, even the drinkers, they are clean, there are no microorganisms in the water, and everything is safe. And we always say that if the water is not safe for you, the farmer, to drink, then you do not have to give it even to your animals. So even when you've got your goats going round, or even your cattle, your cows, always make sure that the water troughs are cleaned thoroughly, and that there is nothing that can contaminate the water. So your water must be of good quality, and we always recommend that once in a while you must be able to take your water to test. So you take it to the labs so that they can look at the water if the water is safe from any microorganisms. So not just safe from microorganisms, but any other foreign material as well. So we talk about clean water for your animals, clean water for all your livestock animals. When looking at water as well, it's very important to consider water availability. There are so many instances when probably you walk into a chicken house and then you see that the drinkers are empty, and probably maybe there's been a blockage along the nipple lines and the water is not just flowing, and therefore the water can be present in the tank, but it's not reaching the chickens, it's not reaching your animals. So it's very important that always be on the lookout to check that the water is also available, right? And then when we come to the feed is very important for our livestock animals, and we do not want to starve them. This is why I'm talking about the freedom from hunger. So feed is paramount in the way that, number one, it has to meet the nutritional requirements of the animal. So your animal, whether be it a cow, it needs to maintain itself, whether be it a fish, whether be it a chicken, it still needs to maintain itself. And you need to provide feed that has got the right nutrition to meet the nutritional requirement of your animal, right? And then every time an animal eats something, first it meets its needs and then it moves on to production. So if you are keeping broilers, it's very important that you feed them so that they are alive and they maintain themselves, and then they can grow to give you the target weights that you're looking for. And then also maybe looking at your layers, we are keeping them so that we get the eggs. But if you don't feed them enough, you may not get the production that you need. So it's always important that you follow the feeding recommendations on a daily basis, so that your layers or your layer birds are well nourished and they are also giving you the eggs that you are looking for. A feed that you are offering to your animals must be well balanced. So we are talking about a well balanced feed where it's got protein, it's got enough or adequate carbohydrates for your energy, as well as minerals and vitamins for the whole metabolism and health of your animals. So it is very important that even when you are buying your feed, you need to make sure that it is nutritionally balanced so that the birds will do well. It is not fair for the animal to eat food that is not balanced, because then this will lead to a lot of problems, which include non-performance as well as disease and sickness. So it is always very important that whenever you are feeding something, you need to make sure that it's tested and you know what's in the feed, you know the protein, you know the energy. Also, when you are feeding, you need to take into consideration the age of the animal. So a day-old chick cannot be fed the same feed as a 35-day-old broiler. Just the same as a cow cannot be fed the same feed that you are giving to the cow. So you take age into consideration, you also take the breed into consideration, so you know what the breed is for. If you are keeping the cattle for milk, that's a dairy breed and you need to feed it accordingly. So age, breed, as well as the physiological status of the animal is also very important to consider. For example, if you've got a lactating cow, you feed it differently from a dry cow. If you've got a pig or a sow that has just given birth, you also feed it in a different way, maybe from a piglet or a piglet that has just been weaned. So it is very important for you to take into consideration the physiological state of your animal, as well as the age and the breed, so that the feeding is correct, and always stick to the recommended feeding so that your animals will perform and they are also getting the nutrition that they require. The second freedom that I would want to talk to you about is the freedom from discomfort, which is also very important for your animal welfare. So you do not want your animals to be in any form of discomfort, and discomfort can come from a lot of things that I will just highlight here. So the first thing that we look at is the temperature around your animals. If we are talking about your brooding, for your broiler chickens, for your piglets, for your layer chicks, we always consider that the environment or the temperature must be adequate enough to warm the animals. So if you're looking at brooding, you must provide the right temperature. So always know that you have to be able to choose the right heat source that will provide the warmth that you need. And there is a wide variety of heat sources that you can use depending on where you are and what you can get. So from charcoal burners to infrared lamps to gas burners. Just be careful that whenever you're using gas burners, you then don't burn the whole place. It is always important to be very careful when using these heat sources. So a heat source must be able to provide adequate heating. So it's always important that you place the heaters at a height that is favorable, and you're always reading the thermometers at chick level. If your animals, let's say your chicks, they get too cold, then this is going to compromise their health, and sometimes they will reduce their feed intake. If you're looking at your piglets, as soon as they are born, you need also to provide them with warmth so that you keep them warm, because when they are still young, sometimes they cannot regulate their own temperature. So you need to help by providing a heat source. Then also another discomfort can just come from the fact that there's not enough ventilation in the house if we're talking about your chickens. So always make sure that your house is well ventilated so that there is fresh air coming in, there's enough oxygen coming in. Also, remember that there's also carbon dioxide and probably carbon monoxide from your charcoal burners that's being produced inside the house, and you would want this to escape through the ventilation. So if you do not have adequate ventilation, it means that your air around your house is actually compromised. And for example, if you've got wet litter in your chicken house, then this can actually produce other gases such as ammonia. And ammonia will also have a lot of problems to your beds. So for example, ammonia can cause footbed dermatitis. Ammonia can also give eye problems. It causes hock burns, breast burns, and at the end of the day, the carcass that you are now producing is not of good quality. So always make sure that there is enough ventilation so that good air can come in and bad air can come out. So we always talk about the freedom to have fresh air. Comfort is also very necessary for our animals, just as it is necessary for us. We always want to sleep at a place that is comfortable, to sit on a comfortable place. And when you consider your chicken houses, when you consider your paddocks, these must also be very comfortable for your birds. So for example, you have to consider the type of bedding material that you are using for your chicks or for your birds. You do not want anything that is spiky, that can cause wounds, that can disturb. Even when you are taking your animals from one paddock to the next, you also just need to make sure that the ground is level so that there are no injuries that can come from where they are walking on. As well as when you are looking at your crows, where you keep your goats, where you keep your cattle, we do not want these places to be very wet, because at the end it's going to affect the hooves and it's going to cause things like foot rot, and you're going to waste a lot of money as you now try to address. So it's just very important that you consider that where your animals sleep, where they eat from, where they spend their day, the place just has to be very comfortable for them. And when you do this, then you know that you have addressed the freedom from discomfort. The other thing that I would also want to talk about is noise. In as much as we may not think that this can affect our animals, it is very important that we try by all means to limit the types and kinds of noise that can surround our farms. So for example, it is common knowledge that our layer birds are very much affected from noise, to the fact that after a noisy environment, they can either have a stampede and you lose a lot of them as they die, or if they are in production, the following day you may not get enough eggs. So this is just a sign that noise is something that can affect production, and it actually affects and interferes with the animal welfare. I also want to talk to you about lighting, which is very important. We do not want your animals to be in dark places. For their eyesight, they need to see the environment, they need to look out for any danger, they need to locate where the feed is, where the water is, and the light in the house must be adequate enough to enable them to see. And we always say that if you go inside a chicken house or inside a pigsty and you cannot read a newspaper in there, then the lux of the light is not adequate even for your animals. So always make sure that you provide good lighting. And also, we also want these animals to be able to sleep at night. So it's also very important that you even have a lighting program where during the night you switch off the lights to allow the birds or to allow your animals to rest well. Resting is very important, and all animals have a right to get enough rest, because if they do not rest, then they do not perform. So provide light when it's needed, switch off the lights when the animals need to sleep, especially for the birds. Then when we are looking at the animals, I spoke about fresh air. You need also, we recommend that you have a lot of greenery, a lot of trees around your farm, so that they provide the shade, so that your animals can go and hide from the sun as well as they can, the trees can produce oxygen. The third and equally important freedom is the freedom from pain, injury, or disease. So it is very important that the welfare of your animal also takes into consideration disease and health management. It's very important that you have all the vaccination programs that you need, the deworming programs in place, and that you are following them. Remember that a sick animal will not perform as good as an animal that is healthy. So the health of your animal is something that you need to consider and something that you need to look at. So just to give you examples, usually when you walk into your chicken house, it's very important that you are careful enough to watch where you are stepping, because sometimes the chicks are too small and you're wearing gumboots or heavy shoes, and you can, without your knowledge, step onto these chicks, and then this can cause injury, and then later on they will come up with leg deformities, leg problems, and then they will not perform well. So it is very important that even in the chicken house, you get rid of any obstacles that may injure your birds. I've seen people removing manure and leaving it, putting manure inside the chicken house, putting bags of feed inside the chicken house, and all these things can actually injure your birds. Even when you're looking at the bigger livestock, the goats, the cattle, you also need to make sure that in the paddocks are free from any material that can cause any injury, because when there are injuries, then the animals are in pain. I always like to talk about footpad dermatitis. This is a condition that comes when your litter gets wet and there's a lot of ammonia inside the chicken house, and you start to see wounds underneath the feet. These are actually painful, and they can also act as a passage for microorganisms to get inside your bird. So it is always important that you watch out for these things. If you are keeping layers, you may find that sometimes cannibalism can kick in. The birds are biting each other, they're pecking each other, and they can have these big wounds that may cause problems if you do not address them. So we always recommend that if you see such kind of behavior in your chickens, you need to separate and segregate the wounded ones, and you treat them separately, right? And then when we are talking of disease, there's so many diseases that we are aware of that can affect our livestock. The common ones, some that are seasonal, and you need to make sure that you are always on watch. So we always recommend that always be in contact with the vet doctors, always be in contact with the extension workers, so that they can come and help you and train you on possible diseases in your area, and you know how to maneuver around these. So things like vaccination programs, things like deworming programs, you need to follow. And when you have sick animals, it is always important that you treat them correctly. So we're talking about the correct dosages at the correct time. Overdosing is actually not fair to the animals. And when you are keeping broilers, remember, some of these medicines, they also even have withdrawal periods. So always make sure that you are following the recommended dosages that are on the leaflets of the medicines that you buy. We often see some farmers or some farm workers who beat the animals, especially the dairy cows, when you are moving them from the paddocks to the dairy parlor. And this is one act that we do not recommend at all. Beating your animals at any given time is not correct, and we do not recommend that you do that, because when you beat the animals, you are putting them into unnecessary stress, and you are also just bringing unnecessary pain to their body. So please do not beat the animals, as this is not a good practice in animal welfare. So the fourth freedom is the freedom from fear and distress. So this causes a lot of mental distress when your animals are in fear or something is stressing them. So it is very important that as a livestock owner, you help your animals to feel comfortable around you, to feel comfortable even when they see you, and to feel comfortable in their own environment. So you need to consider that they also get stressed, and stress is one factor that can affect your production and bring you losses. So stress can be psychological, it can be physical, it can be mental, it can be brought by a lot of things. Environmental stress. For example, when we're looking at your chickens, you need to make sure that they've got the correct temperature around them so that they do not suffer from cold stress, neither do they suffer from heat stress, because these kind of stresses will actually prohibit them from eating well, from drinking well, and at the end, they do not perform well. Other factors that can also bring stress to your animals, we look at things like stocking density. So where we say you have to stock your birds at 10 birds per square meter, and you go in there and you put 15 birds per square meter, you have compromised the feeding space, the drinking space, the air quality, and this will bring a lot of stress to your birds. And always be at the watch out to look at how your animals are looking. When you get into a chicken house, you see your birds panting, they are not eating. You have to know that they are stressed, and you need to correct the environmental temperatures. Even when you're looking at the bigger animals outside, when you look at your pigs in the farrowing houses as they give birth, you need to make their environment comfortable so that they are not stressful. And then there are also other activities that we perform as farmers that can stress our animals. So things like vaccinating our birds, this is very stressful, and you do not have to do consecutive stressful events for your live animals. For example, you are vaccinating them today and you are catching them the next day, because all these things will bring stress to your animals. When we're talking about catching, we all know that we are producing the birds so that we take them to the market. But we always recommend that let the catching be a humane activity that does not bring stress. I've often seen trucks on the highway where the birds are pegged into boxes and they cannot even breathe. And so we always say that make sure that even though you are taking them to the slaughtering house, the slaughtering mustn't be stressful. The catching as well must not be stressful. And when you do this, then you will know that even during the keeping of your birds are happy. And when your animals are happy, they are going to produce way better and give you better profits. Last but not least, I would want to talk about the freedom to express normal behavior. So every living organism has got a normal or natural behavior that is God. And it is very important that you as a farmer, you provide an environment that will allow the animals to express their normal behavior. So for example, if you've got your layers and you've got the deep litter system, allow them to perch. So put perchers in the house so that they can fly on them, they can perch, they can pick on things. So it is not harmful to once in a while to also throw some grains to your birds so that they can pick and just express their normal behavior. So also looking at your bigger animals, which are your cattle, your pigs, your goats, you need to provide with the adequate space for them so that they've got freedom to movement. You need them to move around, you need them to scratch themselves, so even provide scratchers as well. And also, when you've got a breeding program in place, you need to provide adequate space so that they express their normal behavior. They are free to do what they want to do. We do not recommend that you squash your animals or you restrict their movement. Always remember that when your animals are able to express their normal behavior, then they produce better and they give you better results as well. So these are the 5 freedoms of welfare, and I do hope that as you look after your livestock, you will be careful enough to take each one of them into consideration so that you are raising happy animals that will give you a better performance. As Mahatma Gandhi would say, the greatness of a nation and its moral progress can be judged by the way they treat their animals. So let me also conclude today by saying the success of a livestock farmer can also be judged by the way that you treat your livestock. From me, Brenda Kandiero, and the Profeeds Tech team, bye.